Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of CS Cyber. I'm Chad.
I'm Sean.
And today we're continuing our Aqua Guardian Securing the Flow series, where we're talking all about water and wastewater. And we are going to get into the threats facing water systems.
Yeah, so last episode we talked about what cybersecurity is and why it matters. And today we're going to dive into the actual threats that are out there and why water and wastewater systems are such attractive targets.
Yeah, they're juicy.
Was that a water pun? All right, so cyber threats come in many forms, right? And some of the most attractive ones, one is phishing emails. So they look legit, they trick users. AI has made them even more enticing and impressive. We was just listening to a Department of Homeland Security briefing on the way in today, and they were making a comment of just how impressive these phishing emails are getting. So what are the dangers to phishing emails, Chad?
Links, spoof domains. I mean, they've gotten really good since the dawn of AI.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gone from like the broken English to, is this really my mom? I don't know.
I know. I mean, we're cybersecurity professionals, and I think it would be really easy for us to fall victim to this.
Yeah.
So malicious links, attachments, and of course, one of the main things that hackers want to do is they want to harvest credentials.
Yeah.
So sending you to fake web pages and things like that to get your credentials. And then, a lot in the news lately here this week, ransomware. So what's the skinny on ransomware?
So they're just going to encrypt everything, and you're going to pay them to unlock everything.
Right. And they're going to exfiltrate, likely. They're going to exfiltrate data. And in the industrial controls context, they're going to lock you out of your SCADA system. So imagine your HMI system that you use to control your industrial control system or your water and wastewater plant, and you can't access that system to make changes. So that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, we're going to manual mode.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned manual mode. It keeps coming up in a lot of trainings and a lot of discussions about how many water systems that are out there that don't have the proper training and they don't run through what it takes to actually go into manual mode.
So they never actually test manual mode until
until they need to, right? And then they find out that they've got a newer guy that's on duty that night, right? And he doesn't know the procedure. He's never been through it.
He doesn't even know where the book is.
Right. Yeah. And then unauthorized remote access is probably one of the bigger items that impacts a water and wastewater facility.
Yeah, and I think, so the three that you talked about, those aren't unique to water and wastewater, right?
No.
Those are the things that you would see on any IT environment.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people are missing, right? Like your water and wastewater is connected to your IT environment.
Yes.
You think it's not, you think it's air gapped, but it's connected and it's likely not air gapped. There's a remote way in.
Right. I'm actually, we've got a colleague of ours, Kyle Jones, with Sinclair Community College, and he actually wrote a white paper on the whole IT-OT convergence piece. And that's kind of what you're speaking about. And to our listeners, what he's saying is, like in a city context, you've got the city IT department, right? And then you've got the OT or the water or wastewater plant. And typically there's been a big gap area that opens up in between those two organizations. And we're starting to see something called convergence, where the OT folks are becoming more reliant on the IT people. And that's because historically those OT systems have been, quote, air gapped. You can actually see me. Okay.
Quote.
I'm right. Real air quotes, air gapped. And so now that's not really the case anymore, right? So now all these cybersecurity regulations are coming down. The EPA is starting to get more aggressive. And the OT folks are like, hey, IT guys, remember that time we told you to stay out of our network?
Right. You brought that up, and I was thinking, like, the IT guys don't know that the water guys are relying on them.
Yeah.
Like, because to your point, they've stayed out of it, right? They're like, hey, we provide like the connectivity, and you have a email account on this side, and you have whatever shared account that every operator is using on the OT side.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So the whole convergence thing is a thing, and it means that there's a big gap area that needs to be filled. So, we at the Go Cyber Collective, our nonprofit, and myself and Sinclair Community College, we wrote a water and wastewater cybersecurity course for operators, not for the IT people. But the IT people are going to have to be brought up to speed, right? So there's going to have to be some training. Okay. So back to the unauthorized remote access, like TeamViewer and AnyDesk are the two things that we see the most. And those are usually left there in order to have a vendor or some type of support person log in, or the plant itself, right? So maybe that plant's not manned 24/7 and the operators are logging in remotely to make changes. But that also means that those are the same tools that the bad guys use.
Right. And I was thinking about that when I was reading your notes, right? Like TeamViewer and AnyDesk. I'm like, why TeamViewer and AnyDesk, right? Because they're free and they work. And they're going to work for you and they're going to work for the bad guys. So just kind of keep that in mind, right? When you're installing this stuff, is it easy? Does it work for me? It's probably going to be easy and work for somebody else too.
Yep,
unless
absolutely.
I put something in place, right? So.
Correct. Yep. And then nation state attackers and hacktivists. So we've got nation states and state-sponsored actors, as well as hacktivists, and these can be what are called DVEs, or domestic violent extremists, and that's something that's not nation state related, right? Those are vigilante groups inside the United States that are wanting to damage infrastructure. We saw, I don't know, what was it, a couple years ago in North Carolina, we saw a DVE who had targeted a power plant.
Is that when they were shooting?
Just outside Fort Bragg, yes.
Yeah, they were shooting like transformers or something.
Yep, absolutely. So some real-world examples, though, of this nation-state and hacktivist activity. Muleshoe, Texas, last year was attacked through their SCADA interface. So an attacker was actually able, this was a nation-state, Russia, I believe, was able to log in and actually overfill a water tower.
All right.
So... and when that happened, the city lost a lot of water because the overflow system kicked in and the water was spilling out of the water tower. And then I don't know if you remember the back in 2023, the Municipal Water Authority in Aliquippa. This was an interesting one because this was Cyber Avengers, and they're an Iranian group.
Yeah, I think I do remember this one.
Yeah, so the IRGC Cyber Avengers actually targeted Israeli-made PLCs. Yeah. So they specifically looked out there to see Israeli equipment that was exposed, and they basically, did a like a deface. So they put some Israeli symbol and it said "Down with Israel," and they were making a political statement, obviously.
Yeah.
So why are systems vulnerable? How do water operators get into a bad spot?
A lot of the ones that I see, I mean, they're small. They don't have a lot of funds.
Yes.
Their equipment is so old. Yeah.
So those two things basically lead to the majority of the problem, right? Smaller systems, smaller budgets and staff. They may also, we have seen, they may also then contract that out to an IT company that's also smaller, right? That doesn't have the industrial controls experience. So we end up walking into something and going, whoa, you're not using the right, protocols and things in order to do that. And you brought up the legacy equipment, right? And a lot of that is dated from back in the day of these systems actually being air-gapped, right? Yep. So operators were like, hey, we're air-gapped, so we can just let this stuff go. We don't have to update it. Nobody will ever get access to it.
No one will know.
That's right. Nobody will know. And then default passwords.
Oh, yeah, I do see that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really interesting point, right? Because I think a lot of water operators, they bring in a vendor that's going to install their SCADA system, and that's really kind of where it ends, right? They install it, they configure it initially, and then it just runs.
Yeah.
For 20 years. Unless there's a problem, like nobody touch it, it's just going to continue to run, right? So that is... I feel like that's a gap, right? Like we need to bring the software vendors and the IT folks together to say, hey, like we do any other software platform, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we have a plan to upgrade our SQL environment. We have a plan to do this. How can we bridge the software vendors and the IT folks internally or MSPs to say, hey, you haven't updated this, like we need you to update this and put that in the contract. You can't just set it and forget it and come back in 20 years for a redo.
So you're talking about something that we kind of unearthed called cyber-informed engineering. And Sinclair and I actually went out to the Idaho National Labs out in Idaho Falls, and we met with them. And that was something that they brought to our attention. They said, "Hey, just so you know, there's this gap or culture shift in the industry that needs to occur because the engineers themselves, the architectural and engineering firms that actually build the water and wastewater plants, aren't necessarily up to speed with the cybersecurity requirements. The entities that are putting out the request for proposals are also not as up to speed as they need to be to include all the right components in the RFPs, the request for proposals."
Right. So
there's definitely a huge gap there, as well as the ones that we mentioned, right? The OT and IT convergence. So, bottom line is this isn't theoretical discussion. The threats are real. Our water and wastewater systems are being compromised today. And they're not just hitting big cities, right? They're hitting the smaller systems. And I actually believe that the smaller and mid-sized systems are in the crosshairs more than anything. So, yeah. Any final thoughts?
I think they're really just opportunistic, right? They're low hanging fruit. They know they don't have the infrastructure. They know that they don't have the budget. It's scary, I think.
Yep, I agree. All right, well, that's it for this episode. And so next episode, we're going to talk about what the government says you need to do about it. So we'll talk about the EPA, the America's Water Infrastructure Act, AWIA, and some other stuff. So that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining, and we'll catch you next time.
See you next time.